All right, Splicers, great news. I'm back. And this time we're coming with a nice supersized episode because we are going to be covering, I don't think we've ever done this before. Not one, not two, but three movies all in one episode for you. Tonight we are talking about the Guardians of the Galaxy trilogy. Why? Why would we go back into the MCU all over again? Well, Jason's been running around with this misconception that Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 really wasn't that bad. And I'm here to do my duty and let him know what a giant piece of shit that movie really was. But look, I'm going to give the guys a moment all to have a chance to say hi. Jason, you can go last. Matt, why don't you take it away?
Hi, I'm Matt.
Wow.
Excellent.
Thank you, Andrew, for being here and for dumping on Jason immediately. I guess last time you were on his side, so with the Marvel episodes, so this time we'll be butting heads.
That was Gil speaking right there. This is Jason, and I'm alarmed right now because myself. That's all right. I actually completely forgot about the fact that one of the reasons we were going to do this is because Andrew and I disagreed on our Facebook comments, and now I'm concerned because I was already ready for this to be something where I was going to be dealing with Matt and Gil trash talking excellent movies, and now I have to put up with Andrew and his faulty opinions. But that's okay. Here we go. Let's do this.
You thought you had backup.
Yeah,
so
maybe, I thought
maybe the two of you should like resurface that. So, what was the gist of your discussion online? That,
if I remember correctly, and Andrew, feel free to correct me, but I believe it started out as someone was saying something about the movies of the Marvel Cinematic Universe in general, and I think I made some sort of comment about how I thought the Guardians of the Galaxy movies, at the time there was only two of them, about how they were excellent, and I said something to the effect of number 2 was almost as good, if not better, than number 1, and that really frustrated Andrew. Yeah. And so we went on this whole thing where we just started discussing it back and forth, and then eventually this idea popped up. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, blossom like one of Ego's plants.
Where do you fall, Matt, on the like part 2? I guess we can get into 1 and 3 later, but part 2.
I think it falls into the camp for me, kind of adjacent to 1, in that in revisiting it after a few years, it's just like, holy crap, I forgot like 90% of this movie, and I mean, I only saw James Gunn's movie Super once, and I still remember more of that movie than I remembered from Guardians 1 or 2. I remember more from Slither after having seen it probably twice, and that movie's like, what, 20 years old at this point, maybe older, and I mean, they're both fun movies when you watch them. They're just not memorable movies.
I don't want to hit a low blow or anything, but considering the timing of all this, I mean, is it possible that you were drinking while you watched these movies?
That might have like dulled your senses.
Plausible, yes, very plausible. I'll give you that. But
I don't say that to be mean. I just,
although they are party movies, I feel like
they are excellent films and very memorable.
Well, they're excellent videos.
Oh,
but,
sorry.
I
didn't mean to do that.
Digital shorts.
Wow.
Digital features.
We're about 5 minutes away from this lit like a Saved by the Bell comment.
So I guess we can quickly rank them just to see where everybody's at before we get into more of a discussion about with spoilers and stuff. Do you want to start, Andrew?
Sure, absolutely. So 1, is at the top. Then 3. Then I would put the Guardians of the Galaxy Christmas special. The What If Marvel episode where T'Challa was Star-Lord. I've never watched the I Am Groot series, but I'm sure it was a lot better. Then a colonoscopy. And maybe then Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2.
What about you, Matt?
The first one, probably a 7.5. Second one, probably about a 7. Third one, jeez. The third one is difficult because it is the best in terms of drama and the best in terms of comedy, and that's actually its biggest problem. So 7.7.
Yeah. I'm also debating like it's tough for me to before we get to Jason's. I rated like the first one 8. I wonder if I might inch it to like a 9. It's definitely more like an 8.5, 8.7.
Do it.
Um,
To.
What?
Said do it. Go for the 9.
The third one, I agree with Matt. I think there's strong drama there. There's also some interesting like borrowing from other from literature and other stuff. Like James Gunn's definitely you can see that he's like a serious storyteller. Some drawing from other things we can get into later, but inspired by and I wanted to give it a 7 just to balance it out because I gave like volume 2 a 6, and I think I'll stick to the 6. I don't think I hated it too much. I think it was like had a tone issue and a few issues about it. It was like a straight out comedy. It didn't take itself seriously enough. Like there was just not a good balance. That's one of the biggest problem that it has. but yeah, I think I would probably stick to like have 8 for both, for the first one and the third one, just that it's a higher 8 for the first one, and definitely and I agree with Andrew that the Christmas special would be above volume 2 for that specific reason, is because in the special going for straight up comedy makes sense because it's a special and it's not a movie and it's not part of a trilogy. It's not supposed to keep in tone with anything. It's just like a little fun little thing they put together. That shouldn't have been the case with volume 2. I think there's a few things about it we can get into that just went a bit too far with the choices and with the writing. He just went a bit too James Gunn just went a bit too no pun intended, like trigger happy with some of his like quirks, and he definitely toned it down back in the third one. But it works in the special. It doesn't work in the full length movie. That's overall my conclusion.
Okay. I would just probably put the first one at like a 9, and then the second and third at like about a 8.5 or so. I really enjoyed the Christmas special. I did feel that there's a couple of moments that could have been a little shorter and could have kind of gotten to the point a little faster, but I did enjoy it. I love the fact that such a short little thing, they still managed to find a way to put a lot of meat into the ongoing story that is the through line throughout all of the movies. And I also didn't watch the I Am Groot show, so I don't know about that stuff. But yeah.
Sorry for screwing up the number system, guys. I totally got that. I fucked that up.
It's okay. It's not a big deal. But Jason, so which one is higher for you, 2 or 3?
About the same.
About the same? Like really? Like if you had to like choose one,
I can't.
you couldn't
Absolutely.
choose?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Oh wow, that's okay. We need to get into that.
I honestly, it's literally what I'm feeling right now is like as if we were discussing like, I don't know, like Back to the Future, and you guys are all like saying, like Andrew's over here saying like number 1 is so good and number 3 isn't as good as 1, but it's good, and then number 2 just fucking sucked, and I'm just like, what? Like I don't understand what movie you guys saw. And you're saying that like number 2 had a tonal problems, like, oh, it's too funny. It's exactly the same tone as the first one. It's incredible.
No, it's not exactly. It's a bit too much. But yeah, we can get into the specifics in a moment. But yeah, but I will say, as far as like recommending and stuff, I think and it's funny enough, when I was in Israel, I spoke to my 2 friends there on a variety of subjects, but and we came across the Guardians like as a subject, and I told them like, yeah, we're recording this podcast, like just give me some material about like what you disliked about Volume 2. Because my friend, I actually saw it in Israel back when it came out, like in 2017, because I was visiting, and I saw it with him. And I remember him walking out of the theater, and he was like, "What a piece of shit," you know. So I was like, give me some material, because it's been like a month since I've seen these. Like, I'm not gonna remember anything by the time we record. So and I recorded our conversation, so I listened to it the other day on Tuesday, just to have some material. But like one of the things that he said is that is like about the tone, the humor. There's a few other things that we can get into, but as far as one of the things I brought up in my conversation with them is that Guardians is really the closest thing that we got, aside from like Lord of the Rings, it's Star Wars. Like he really like came up with something that's because Lord of the Rings wasn't in space, something that was like what Star Wars was, is like a bunch of a ragtag of people going on an adventure, all with different personalities. You have like I Am Groot, which is basically there's like Chewbacca essentially. Like all the characters, like sort of you can fit them. And what he did, like the issue with Star Wars was that Mark Hamill wasn't nearly as charismatic as Harrison Ford. He was like asexual, and like and Han Solo was the cool guy. So even though the hero wasn't the coolest character, what he did here, he made a hybrid. He put them 2 together, and that's how he came up with Star-Lord, which is like a combination of like, the Jedi Knight and the scoundrel character. And he successfully did it. Like he's really like a captivating character, and everybody around him is very very fun and captivating. And I think he had the right tone with the first movie. I think it was like slightly off tune on the second one, but he definitely gained it back on the third one. But what he got together is like a bunch of people that are really fun to go on an adventure with. Even though if they're a little goofy at times, a bit too goofy, but it's special. That's why Spielberg, when he saw this movie, like the first Guardian, he said like it's the first time since I was a kid that like I saw a movie that kind of like reignited like my belief in the magic of movies, because it just was so full of like joy, the joy of filmmaking, the joy of like storytelling. Like it oozed from the screen for that first one. So I'll give that to James Gunn. Like he made a solid trilogy that could easily be a top 5, top 10 of all time. We're talking like Back to the Future, Lord of the Rings, Star Wars. Yeah.
I was going to bring up a really good talking point that my friend and I talked about regarding the Guardians of the Galaxy trilogy and its placement in all trilogies and where it ranked and such. But honestly, there's no point in even bringing it up. All of you guys have such a negative opinion of number 2. It's like it would just fall on deaf ears. So like, I think it's better to spend time talking about what we thought about the movies.
Yeah, but I'm just saying. Before we get into spoilers, I thought it's worth giving it props, because I don't think that Volume 2 hurts it like to the point where like it's not as if I'm trying to find an equivalent trilogy where the second one is like just complete shit. Like because this was not. It was not complete shit. It was like a decent movie. It had the right intentions.
Yeah.
But it's just that it like there's evidence, like whether it's Andrew, whether it's my friend, like people just didn't react to it the same way as the first one. And at first I thought when I was gonna revisit it, is it because of the novelty that the first one was just so new and so fresh, and it just wasn't there for the second one, and maybe the third one because there was a gap and COVID and everything. Maybe everybody was like itching for like another Guardians movie, so it's more well received. Like I don't know if it's just a. That's why when I watched it again, I was like, you know what, I did like it better this time, but I see those issues. I see like where it went a bit too far with specific things. So yeah, if can get into the spoilers.
Well,
Yeah.
one thing that I will say though that the Guardians got entirely right is that Vin Diesel finally got to show his range as an actor.
Wow.
I thought that too. I mean,
But
he brought the character to life. He really did.
It's charisma. Cool. So I guess spoilers.
yeah, absolutely.
Let's do it.
I mean, I would be curious to hear like Andrew's specifics, and then to have a rebuttal from Jason.
Yeah.
Oh, I came prepared. I have a list of my own, Jason.
Oh boy,
Shall I
I'm
go? Shall we
concerned,
go?
but go for it.
a
Yeah.
taste of his own medicine.
If you say
Yes.
so.
Well, I think it's important to preface it with I have an incredible bias towards the first Guardians of the Galaxy, and it's incredibly personal. When the first Guardians came out, I have two very close friends of mine who like lost their fathers the weekend that movie opened, and one of those guys I went to go see Guardians of the Galaxy with him, like when it happened, and of course he wasn't sober for it. I don't think he really remember seeing that movie, but it's just like that movie is forever ingrained in like in my mind with that experience. And then it also within a year of that movie coming out, I lost both of my parents. So for me, that first movie, just from like emotional attachment factor, like there's never going to be anything that compares to it, just because there's just so much personal stuff to it. And then the thing Gil mentioned earlier about what Steven Spielberg said about just the unadulterated joy that came from like seeing that movie was something I felt very, very deeply. The music, the colors, the jokes, all of it was just spectacular. Like afterwards, I'd be cruising around in my car, imagining it's Milano. Like I love that movie, like with the heart of a child. So you can imagine how I felt going into Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 and leaving the theater after that experience. And the biggest problem I have with it is that I felt that Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 was incredibly forced. There were too many cooks in the kitchen, and it just was not at all what I wanted. And there were so many factors that were going against it. I think Marvel was trying to cram a lot of shit into that movie that just didn't really belong. Sylvester Stallone's little faction trying to spin off a little franchise that never happened. That just really didn't feel like it had a place in that movie. Setting up the golden guy who was the kid from Where the Millers. It was just a lot of clunky shit that was all being piled on top of a story that was not very strong. The first movie was compelling. It had this whole dimension of like dealing with a superhero and his mother. And so it's just like to jump right immediately from that to do a storyline about the father. It's just too close. We already had it. We had a much better version of it. And to go and have this contrived story where he's obviously a villain and the Guardians should be like smart enough to not to fall for it. And Peter Quill falls for it. It just didn't earn the story. It didn't earn the beats and the moments. And so I remember going to see it. I'm watching the movie and I'm just waiting for it to get good. And we got to this point where Ego and Peter start playing catch. And right before that moment happened, I said, if they start playing catch here, I know this thing's just fucking dead in the water. And then sure enough, it happened right away. And it just will continue this trend of like the movie being incredibly predictable, like throughout the whole thing. you had the subplots, some of which I thought was okay. The thing I liked probably the best was Rocket and Yondu. Um, but then you have the subplots of Nebula and Gamora. Again, very, 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 very like predictable. It just felt like it was a lot of stuff we had seen before, and then they completely forgot about Drax, and they had like this like D storyline with him and Mantis, and just like you have all of this shit in one movie. And you came from something that was so spectacular and so special to just like a complete total disappointment. Watching that movie again was an absolute chore just because the dialogue was so stiff, the jokes just weren't funny, and just like it was just really uninspired. It felt like such a total cash grab, and it was just an absolute disappointment.
Mm-hmm.
Insane. You go ahead, Jason.
Yeah.
I mean, if you didn't list so many specifics, I would insist that you didn't even watch the movie. It's honestly that ridiculous. I don't know. Like, I'll try to address everything you said, but I mean, it's just going to be a bunch of, yeah, I get what you're talking about, except you're totally wrong because that was great, not bad. I mean, for starters, let me just say that I also agree with you. I'll start with that. That the attempting to like push the possibility of Disney making a Marvel making some sort of Ravengers property starring Stallone and stuff like that at the very end was unnecessary. And like there's that little thing at the very, very end where they're just kind of like, yeah, let's go. This is like making me feel good again. Let's go steal some shit and let's all team up together again or whatever, like the good old days. You didn't need that to push something. If it was going to happen, it was going to happen, not with or without that scene. But having the Ravengers in the story as much as they was not fat. It was not unnecessary story elements. The whole point of that second movie, or not the whole point, but a massive portion of it, is that Quill is searching for more family, which is what he's always doing in every one of these movies. And he is particularly looking for his father. And of course, that means we need to develop Yondu. And we have to show scenes that give us ideas of what Quill's childhood was like, where he was growing up with, or his adolescence, we should say, with the Ravengers and with Yondu and stuff like that. We need to show what the whole situation was with Yondu and why he, did what he did. We have to explain all that stuff. So naturally, the second movie is going to have more of the Ravengers in it than the first one did, which, by the way, the first one still had a lot. It still had those characters. So it's not even weird at all for them to be in it. Did they focus a little too much on Stallone? Sure, bit, but that's barely anything. It's not even like anything that ruins the movie in any way. Secondly, your complaint about Adam Warlock at the end, that's a tag. Like, yes, we show the what did they call them? That not species. I guess they were a species actually. The Golden People, where they hired them to kill the obelisk thing in the beginning. They show them, yes, and they use them as a threat for why they're about to die when Ego shows up or whatever. But that's the last time we see them in the movie. And then you're saying they spent too much time setting up Adam Warlock. It's a tag. It's like a
That's
10
not
second
true. That's not true. There were scenes. There were other parts.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. If you say so.
Because they show up at the end during the climax of the movie.
Yeah, that's
but
true.
there's
They do show up in the
yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
I'm saying that they are a character in the movie, but you're complaining about setting up this other character. That none of that has to like. That's a tag at the end. If they had not put that tag at the end, and he was not in number 3, you couldn't make that statement at all, and you would still have all that other stuff in the movie that's part of the story, part of the plot, part of everything in it. They didn't spend or waste time setting up Adam Warlock. That's a ridiculous statement. Lastly, I'll throw in a few other things just that are directly addressing what you said. I don't know. I mean, yes, in the first movie, I guess Drax has a little bit more meat because he's avenging his family directly because Ronan is the one who killed them. But I mean, I don't really feel like he had that much less story in this one. I mean, in the first one, he doesn't really connect with anyone individually on the team. He just kind of connects with all of them as a whole, which is the same way that everybody on the team connects with each other. And the movie ends. And that's exactly how it should have been. It was great. It was fantastic. In the second one, so he doesn't have a revenge plot, but we're going to actually pair him up with an almost opposite antithesis of his character. And we're going to let them, like bond in an interesting way that sets up many great things to come, like the holiday special and everything that they do in the third movie and stuff like that. I mean, he probably has the least of an arc and the least of like a meaty story for number 2, but it's not like it's that much less than what he had in the first one.
But like a quick note about that, like one of my friends said, is like his character specifically was written really, really well in the first one, and it was an interesting character. The approach to it, his attitude, and the way he like can't understand metaphors and stuff, and he's too literal. But it seems like it kind of falls by the wayside in the second movie, and he becomes like he's totally with it. He like laughs out loud like nonstop. He's like a jokester. Like he completely, like, his character changes too much in the second one is the way it feels.
He laughs in the first one when they're at the bar. He's laughing.
Less so, but it's less so. He's a very serious character in the first movie. He doesn't get the jokes.
He doesn't get the jokes in 2 or 3, but he's also in number 1. He's on a revenge kick. By number 2, he has changed a bit, not much, but a little bit. He's got just like Quill. He's got a bit of a family around him now. He can, interact with people.
Yeah, no, it's you can definitely make that argument. I can buy that some weight was lifted off of him, and he's had some time. With them.
A lot of his scenes, not all of them, but a lot of his scenes are now with Mantis, and those are humorous because of the nature the two of them have with each other. She's so completely different from him, and the way that she sets up stuff for him to say is amusing. It's not out of character for him to say those things, but then, I guess you could, an argument could be made that in number 2, that James Gunn uses the two of them and their reactions to each other for more comedic stuff rather than more meaty stuff that he reserves for Gamora and Nebula and things like that. But I mean, I don't think anything that he said, I would just argue that I don't feel that anything he's doing in number 2 is out of character.
It seems like he definitely evolved. Do you agree that he evolved a bit too much between the movies? But you can accept that if you say that like he's been around them long enough, and I
definitely don't agree that that they changed anything about him getting stuff. I mean, every comment he makes throughout the entire time when they get to Ego's planet and Ego's explaining everything and he's chiming in left and right is the same tone deaf, I don't understand social situations character that he was before.
For the most part, yeah, no, he definitely keeps him, but yeah, it's just like moments just feel a bit.
I guess.
I mean, I don't know. Where did Matt? Where do you fall on the second movie? I don't know how. I don't recall specifically your rating and stuff, like as far as like if there was.
I was going to ask you to reiterate that too. I forgot.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think everything that needs to be said has been said. I mean, I'm floating in the middle between
on both sides.
I, I, I'm a hardcore, like, floating in the. I just
It's good to be in the middle
yeah,
sometimes.
yeah. Just go ahead and skip me on this one. But
No, but I can make like another point is about is the character. I like the fact, like, I think it made sense that he went for the father because it was a mystery who the father was. But I think one of the issues is that the father, the Kurt Russell character, is way too powerful. Like, he didn't need to be that powerful. Like, it could have been like a second, third rate god. It still would have made the same point, because like it really feels like there's no reason why they should have survived that. Like, he could have like killed them long ago. He could have, like, it seems like, and I get it, in a movie you want to make the obstacles seem insurmountable, but this was ridiculous, the level of power that he had. And then the fact that it like makes him some sort of like a mini god. But then I don't feel like that plays much into the third movie or in general his character, the fact that he's like a semi, like a god. um Say like in
Because he
Hercules
gives
or
up.
something.
He gives up being a god at the end of this
Yeah,
one.
I guess he does. That's how he solves that issue story wise, because he didn't want to have to get bogged down with that in other movies. I forgot about that part, but yes, it's the whole thing is very strange. I get it that it makes him more unique as a character because he's like a semi god, but I felt like it didn't need to go as far as it did, because still making him, say, a semi-powerful creature would have been effective enough and interesting enough to not have to go as far as they did. Like, it's but again, I get it. It's a choice. Also, I think the tone of the world, like the colors and stuff, I felt like just tonally was a bit too bright, too
I'll agree with that.
to like the rest of the Marvel universe, as opposed to what the first one and maybe the third one was, which was a bit more like toned down. Um, but
geez, I thought the third one actually went aggressive with the brightness.
the brightness,
And
I can see that. No, for sure. Although a lot of the scenes, like the stuff in the cages and stuff, is like, very, very
yeah,
dark.
and we can get into that, and that's some of the strongest shit that was in the third movie. But
Yeah, but
yeah,
one thing I'll say, positive, I think it was in the second one, wasn't the since I guess we're sort of like in the spoiler section.
I think we definitely are.
I think we are, yeah. Isn't it the second
Yeah.
one when there's that plane coming in the distance and Gamora like tries to run away from it? Is it in the second movie?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
saw
It's
this
Nebula coming after
time,
her.
and I'm like, I don't know how I didn't get this the first time I saw this movie. I was like,
the North
it's
by
like
Northwest reference.
North by Northwest. Like, that's
Yeah.
like that scene, because we examined it so many times, like in film school. It's like an homage to that scene. But
Yeah.
I mean, like, back when I saw it, like 2017 in Israel, I was just like not in the right mindset to think like movie references. And then the thing I was gonna say to that I appreciated about the third one is that, like, 2/3 through the movie is like it's got that moment about like the one of the women there, and the bridge tells the creator or whatever the guy was, he was telling, like, your obsession with this like one creature is like unhealthy or something like that. I was like, fuck, this is like Moby Dick.
Yeah.
The whole story of like the third one is essentially like he's like his Moby Dick, like this
He's
like loose.
he's Ahab and Dr. Moreau rolled into one.
Yeah, exactly. And Rocket is like his Moby Dick, essentially, like some sort of like ethereal creature that he cannot, like, I guess, like, catch. So I appreciate the fact that James Gunn throws these references into essentially, like, comic book movies. So that's like what I appreciate about it. And like I said, I don't despise the second one. I just felt like it was a dropping quality from the first one. um but it's not nearly as bad as some other trilogies where like the second movie, or honestly, it reminds me of The Empire Strikes Back. That was a dip for me as well. I know most people think it's the best Star Wars movie, but to me, that was a dip. That was like, no, you didn't hit it right on the mark on that one. And it didn't hurt. It didn't hurt the Star Wars trilogy. It was still a very solid trilogy. And even though it didn't have an ending, it was still a solid movie up until that point for the most part. It still wasn't as entertaining as the first, as the fourth and sixth one, but it was still an okay movie. So that's how I feel about the second one. Like it was well intended. It was doing its own thing. It was trying to do something different, but I think he made a good correction for the third one. And
most Gen Xers would totally disagree with you.
Yeah, I'm sure. But the gist of it for me with these movies, like the first one, why I was so infatuated with it is this whole idea, like we said, this ragtag of people, these weirdos coming together and creating a family because they don't have a family. That's a very touching story. Like, because all their families are like, dysfunctional, or they've lost them, or whatever it is, but they come together and create this bond. And in the climax, when Groot saves them and sacrifices himself to almost die, or at least for a moment we thought he might
he's
die.
Dead.
Yeah, like you thought he was dead, like in that moment.
He is dead.
He's dead.
Groot is dead at the end of Guardians 1. The little Groot is like an offspring that grew from his roots.
Oh,
He doesn't have any of the same memories.
So he's like a different. That's good to know. I didn't know that. I thought it was just because he can grow, but it takes more time if he's mostly destroyed. So you see, I did not know that. That was not explained very well. But
it definitely wasn't.
but the second one, I felt like didn't have the same thing. It didn't build on it. It didn't do anything new. It was just like a father-son story. And the third one, I felt like, again, we're going for this thing of like it's mostly focusing on one character's family of sorts, like the Rocket's history, but more so than the second one. In the third one, I think he was able to. He brought the Moby Dick, analogy. Like he brought these things that made it more than just about that. Like it's about this concept of like, what is creation, and what's our like obligation to our creations and things like that. Like, like that's actually like a perfect example of like playing God. Like that guy was a god of sorts, and like a Frankenstein, type of like scientist of sorts. And that's a more compelling human nature story than say anything was in the second one. That's why I felt like it was a bump up on the third one. So that's my overall
let me disagree with you. And by doing so, let me just map out, and I'm just going off the cuff here. Okay. This is essentially the gist of what these movies are going for. In the first one, as you already said, you've got all these different characters that are kind of lost. They don't really have a family. They come together despite all their loss and form a sort of family. That sort of like not a real blood family, but that sort of family that you choose, kind of thing, that your circumstances choose for you in their case, and it's beautiful at the end. With the Groot sacrificing himself, and they all come together and they do what they do. And it was really smart that in the first one, they don't do too much. They don't, they got Quill and Gamora and they tease a little bit there, but they make it very clear that he's interested, but very clear that she's not. By the end, she's flirtatious with him at best, and moreover, the movie is more or less framed up with the opening and closing scenes with his involving his memories of his mother and everything, and how the addition of this new family around him has helped him deal with the trauma of his past regarding his mother's passing and things of that nature, right? So then by the end of the first one, he has a family. But what could be more universal? How many countless movies are there that are made about a person who was raised by one parent and then goes off to find their long lost other parent because they feel that something's missing and they need that something in them needs answers. You know, that's what they're doing in this one. They're going to explore the father angle. They do it, but they don't just stop there. Or I should say, he didn't just stop there. James Gunn also wrote in parts for everybody else. Like I said before, yes, Drax has a little bit less meat than everyone else, but here he lost everybody, and now he's got this, this replacement family of sorts, if you will. But now he's got someone he can kind of bond with in a very strange, peculiar way. You've got Gamora and Nebula exploring this concept of estranged family that don't like each other, but still coming together in the end when they need to. And you've got of course, the most obvious thing, the whole story with Quill and his father, which turns out to be that when you do search for that, you do find that, and it ends up being the opposite of what you want. It's not a loving, caring individual. It's something horrific and terrible. And of course, we get to spend time in the movie with Rocket and Groot. And how perfect is it that in the second movie, when you need to develop Quill's actual father, the person who actually raised him, we get to spend all this time with Yondu. So we do it with Rocket and Groot, and the whole time now in this second movie, because Groot is this tiny little infant thing, now Rocket has to be more of a father figure to him in all of these scenes, and he's learning from Yondu and stuff like that. And then of course it ends with this, not only with Gamora finally actually falling for Quill, it also ends with the incredibly cathartic moment. I before you say anything, Andrew, I know that you said you felt nothing at this part, which is bewildering to me. But this incredibly cathartic moment when, after all this stuff with Ego, all this stuff with Kurt Russell and his actual biological father, and they have to defeat his father, kill him, and then I see they're flying away. Yondu sacrifices himself for Quill, and then explains in one simple line of dialogue that of all that stuff, he doesn't need to worry about the fact that his father was a piece of shit, because that doesn't make him a piece of shit, because his real father was Yondu, and his real father actually cared about him. And that's beautiful. And that movie ends in a tragic way because he discovers what he's looking for about himself, but loses that father in the process. And now at the end, he has more of a sense of family with all these people than he had before. And on top of all that, he has love. Now he has actual romantic love with Gamora. And then the craziest thing is that leads into Infinity War, where they take everything from him. They strip everything away and kill her. And now all that terrible stuff that happens in those movies, and everybody dies except for Nebula and Rocket. And then we get 5 years of the two of them working together, dealing with the fact that they barely even knew each other. They knew each other basically from that one fight that they had with Ego at the end of number 2, and as adversaries. And now they're working together and dealing with their grief for 5 straight years. And luckily everyone gets blipped back into existence. And we get on to number 3, where we go into all the great stuff that one has to offer. Oh, not to forget, sorry, I'm skipping over the holiday special. Can't do that. You get one nice little moment where, after all this silly little adventure about Christmas and everything like that, and Kevin Bacon, excellent stuff, love it. But you get this nice moment at the end where Quill is rightfully depressed because of everything that has happened to him, and he's lost the love of his life. While he still has a close family around him now, he has lost the only true love that he's ever had. And then comes to find, he's missing a hole in his family now, and he comes to find not what he needs, but something that will help. The fact that realization that Mantis is in fact actually his half sister biologically, and that helps him. It's a little thing. It's not much, but it helps, you know. And then we go into the final one where, yes, it's more focused on Rocket, which is kind of appropriate, actually. We show his family, his loss, all that stuff. I'm just going to summarize this really quickly, but basically at the end, everyone is kind of coming to their full circle where they get to, and you got Quill realizing that, yes, now he has, throughout that movie, he's fighting the entire time to save what's left of his family and desperately trying to get Gamora back, which doesn't happen, of course. But at the end, like, the most important part of the movie is when they're resuscitating Rocket. And you've got, I think personally, I think it's the most powerful part of the movie too, because you've got Gamora resisting him perfectly. Like, he's making no headway with her at all until she goes through his stuff and she starts learning about him. But even then, she's not even interested in him. She's just curious. And then she's finally realizing that how much these people care about each other when she sees them all fighting to get Rocket back alive again on that table. And she starts seeing Quill not giving up and trying to do some form of weird raccoon CPR on him, you know, and she's just like moved by it. And when he survives, they're juxtaposing all those moments with the peaceful, tranquil, serene moments of Rocket going to heaven and seeing Layla and Teefs and Floor, and like he wants to go with them, but then he gets brought back, and when he's there, he's like in their arms, and it's the people he cares about most. It's Quill and Groot hugging him, you know, the two people that should be there the most. And then the first thing he says is like, it's great how James Gunn twists that scene, because he's like, you can see Gamora warming up to them and, you know, and melting inside. And then he looks up towards the camera and he just says, "Where's Nebula?" Because you think at that moment she might actually be dead, the way that they've timed it with all that stuff. And you realize that, oh man, in all those 5 years where everybody else was gone, he bonded with her a lot because they were all that they had with each other. So it's like very appropriate that would be his next question. But he's not asking, is she alive? He's actually just saying, hey, she's calling us, you know, kind of moment. And as silly as that is a nice uplifting sort of moment, immediately it hits you again just a moment later when they get on the comms and Star-Lord starts complaining and arguing with Nebula and Drax about, why the hell are you on that spaceship? You were coming to save us. We're coming to save you. This back and forth. And Rocket just says, everyone's alive. It doesn't matter. We're all okay. Let's move forward from here. And you can see Nebula and Drax and Mantis, when they hear his voice and realize that they've succeeded at resuscitating Rocket, that's the moment where they realize, even though they're separated in that moment, their family is finally back together again. And it's such a powerful moment. And of course, once they've got all of that at the end of the movie, then the logical place is for Quill to realize that he should not be afraid to go back to Earth, back to his planet of origin, and see if there's some sort of life that maybe he can make for himself there. Maybe it means he'll come back to his family, his real, you know, his family with the Guardians at some point. We don't know. That's like for the future, but at least it's a logical point for it to end with his character. And then you get, of course, the conclusion of Rocket being a more full, complete character and everything like that. But my whole point with that ridiculously long explanation is that the stuff that happens in Guardians 2 is pivotal and logical in terms of its next step in that whole story. And it's just bewildering to me that you guys are like, it just didn't do it for me.
You know, it's just like, I understand everything you're saying, Jason, and I get your point, but like, from the execution perspective, it just shit the bed, and it was incredibly forced. Like, I've heard you say a couple of times, like, Quill seeking out his father in the second movie. He wasn't. He and the Guardians were on some side mission, and after they got stuck on the planet, Ego finds him. So it's like it's not necessarily protagonist like pursuing the journey. It's like Ego shows up and they're like, okay, well let's see what this is about. Let's explore. So he's presented with this opportunity, but he's not looking for shit like that at the beginning of that movie. They're off on their own thing. They're not on that journey that you mentioned.
I agree
So
with that, but and maybe that's one of several reasons why I would say it's not as good as number one. But
yes,
I think, but whereas I think it's a 9 to an 8.5, you think it's like whatever you said to like a something that's not even on that chart, probably. Not even on that
I
scale.
give it a
Yes.
6. So like it's not a bad rating. But yeah, I agree with you too that when you lay it all out, it was well thought through. Like I'm sure that James Gunn knew a lot of these Marvel movies get trilogies, so you want to kind of plot out what you're gonna do for the most part, and it's well thought out. Yeah, it's just it's like just tonally and then a few things, but it's not. I don't think it's a bad movie. I think that it's just I can see myself even inching it to like a 7. I will say on IMDb the critics agree with you. Strangely, the Volume 2 has like two like I think it's like a 2 numbers above like 3. Like I think it's like 64 Metacritic and 3 is like 62.
I didn't check the Metacritic. I did see uh, the Rotten Tomatoes. The first one has the highest score for sure,
Yeah,
and
it's got
then
76 Metacritic, so it's way above the other two. But
the second one was just barely above number 3. But I don't know. I think number 3 is
but
excellent as well. I don't have any
but the
problem.
users agree with I think most of us. Like the first one is 8.0, the second one is 7.6, and the third one is 7.9. So
Ah,
so I think the users, the fans, actually are putting it like in the order that most of us are doing. So that they definitely, I think, so there's some detection of like a slight dip, but like we've said many times on the podcast, like making a movie is difficult.
yeah.
Like there's so many things that need to come together. The script needs to be right, the tone has to come right. Like there's all these people collaborating with you to make it happen, and it's not always gonna like whether it's like the Marvel people got involved, like Andrew said, it's these things that can impact it. And maybe that could be a good segue to like Matt's thoughts about like the cinematography and stuff. Look, especially you mentioned the third one.
Oh, jeez.
We can like try to wind it down. We did pretty well. We covered it well, and we're at about the 1 hour mark. So
I feel like I was
I
talking
think
too much.
Matt's
Sorry.
brain is fried from that plot recap.
Sorry about that.
no, but you were saying, Matt,
Uh,
about the like the third one you thought was like brighter than the first two.
uh, definitely at times. I mean, the entire sequence in what was it? That fucking ship with Nathan Fillion and everything. And I mean,
No,
who doesn't?
Orgo or
Oh yeah,
something like
that
that.
that was
It was
way too
very
bright.
bright.
That's a
Yeah.
Yeah,
good point.
right. Who doesn't love Nathan Fillion? But yeah, it was
He's been
just
in every one of James
yeah,
Gunn's movies.
By the way, with that whole sequence started, I was like, oh, is this Guardians 2 again? Like I was really concerned about the tone there, but then as the movie progressed, they brought it down again. So I agree with Matt that like if because it's like a specific set and a specific spaceship, I guess you can accept it. But it's there was definitely iffy that whole sequence.
actually one thing that I will bring up, like something that was missing from Guardians 3 was Michael Rooker.
Yeah.
James Gunn
Thank you.
knows.
They killed off the best character.
Yeah, James Gunn knows how to use Michael Rooker better than any
Yes, he does.
director in cinema. And I mean, Michael Rooker has been a great, kind of ugly, off-putting guy in cinema forever. for like 30 years, from JFK to The Walking Dead and everything. Like the guy
Cliffhanger.
Huh?
Cliffhanger.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. The guy has just been a consistently good actor, and James Gunn figured out, like, hey, this is not a good-looking guy, but he's a great actor, and hey, I'm gonna make Slither, and I am gonna make him even uglier. I am going to make him the most grotesque fucking thing that you can imagine on screen, and he manages to do it. I mean, like, that was the biggest loss of Guardians 3, was that Michael Rooker was not in it.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah.
I guess
I'll
could have
just
done flashbacks or something. Yeah.
They put him in one flashback.
He's he has one like shot.
Yeah.
When he's teaching shotgun to use the arrow.
They repeat
his heart.
the line too.
Yeah. I'll grant that, but I mean, Michael Rooker's not only, physically creepy, he just does a good job of being on screen creepy. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, he's kind of like that Family Guy bit of having a Willem Dafoe under your bed. Only it's probably kind of maybe worse. I don't know. He's, he just has one of those faces. Like, but yeah, I mean, James Gunn has used Michael Rooker as well as any director in Hollywood, and that element just wasn't in 3. There were a lot of elements in 3. Michael Rooker wasn't one of them, but anyway.
I was happy that I was happy to see him bring Greg Henry back.
Yeah,
the guy who plays the grandpa.
Yes.
Oh yeah,
absolutely.
I was wondering about the guy who played that.
He's in most of he's been in most of James Gunn's movies. He's really, really funny in Slither.
Oh, makes sense.
I had a couple of issues with 3, but they were pretty small ones. I mean, they're like nothing too big. Like there's a few moments where like I felt like just what was being portrayed on screen was just a little bigger than it needed to be. I don't know if that makes sense, but like
you mean when they try to act like Rocket's been the main character throughout the whole trilogy?
No, not that. I mean like you know that tendency that movies have where they're like, it's the sequel, it's got to be bigger and better. Like whatever we did in the first one's got to be even bigger. Like there's times where like for instance,
the final battle.
The final battle, yeah, it's like, okay, we're gonna save a bunch of like little tomorrow babies, the little star children or whatever they call them, and then we're gonna save a bunch of animals. I'm good with all that. I think that's great. It upped the stakes as soon as they revealed the little kids. It gave Drax something to do, with the whole thing where Nebula says that he's a father and he always should have been a father and all that stuff like that. It's kind of nice and everything. But like, did we need there to be like 65 of them? Like, couldn't there have been a dozen? Like a nice dozen. I mean, that's still a lot of kids for Drax to look after. Like at the end of the movie, do we need 65 of them? I don't know. I'm not so sure about that. The animals at the end. I get so emotional when I see Rocket like grabbing the little tiny raccoons in his hand, and then he looks around and there's like more cages, and he's like, I got to get them all. But then the stampede of animals is like out of control. like they had that many. I mean, I guess it's not too bad. It's just like it seems unlikely that there wouldn't have been a bunch of small animals getting crushed, you know. But the real one that really got me with when it comes to this aspect was like the scene with the obelisks. Like they drop them in the pit, and it's like, oh no, it's that thing from the second movie, and it took the whole team to defeat it. What are we gonna do? Oh well, it's great because this is the moment that Mantis is gonna shine, and she's gonna use her power to communicate with the beast, kind of thing. Did we need 3 of them? Like, really? I mean, wouldn't 1 have been enough? And then that funny moment at the end where they're like, we're saving all the animals, and they're even going to save that gigantic monster, and it comes busting through the wall, you know, and it rolls onto the nowhere head. You know, wouldn't 1 have still been just as funny? Does there need to be 3 of them? I don't know. It just seemed like a lot to me. That's all.
It also kind of seems not realistic that they wouldn't have started firing
Yeah.
on.
Yeah.
Like it's just like, you know, you've got laser guns and you've got a lot of large beasts charging at you. It kind of seems
Yeah.
more than logical, justifiable that you would start like pulling the trigger. And
it also,
stuff.
maybe this ties into what Matt just said. I don't know, or maybe what he said ties into this. I don't know. The only other complaint I had, and this is kind of a nitpicky thing, but it's more of like just acknowledging how good the first couple movies were at doing this. But I love seeing movies like this where it doesn't matter if it's a fantasy thing or sci-fi thing or just like just a very technical movie. It doesn't matter what it is. But when you acknowledge the world that this movie takes place in, and you give us rules and you give us things that we need to know, and then you find creative ways to make that all work for a compelling story and a compelling plot, that just makes a good movie, you know. And there's a lot of that in the first one, and there's a lot of that in the second one. And I just feel like the kind of a few little things drop the ball, just like with what Matt was just talking about. Like at the end, it's like with that moment that Matt's talking about, where they're all strapped up with all their guns and they're about to go in, guns blazing, and then all the 3 obelisks with the 3 characters come busting through the door, and they don't even shoot at them at all. Before that scene, also, we've already established 5 or 6 times in this movie that Nebula has a very powerful gun on her arm. They could have written in some reason why she, for 5 minutes, couldn't use that thing, you know, or something like that. Like maybe it was out of power or something and needed a few minutes to get booted back up again or something. I don't know. You just come up with something. But they're surrounded by 3 of these giant monsters, and there's like a 20-second scene before, you know, where they're moving around the space trying to figure out what to do before Mantis steps forward and takes charge of the situation. Why is Nebula not just blowing holes in those things with her arm? You know?
Yeah.
And then same with that same sort of situation at the end. I just feel like I really feel like it was great that we got a moment to really appreciate at the end that yes, even though we spent so much time on Rocket, that this is still kind of Quill's story, and we're gonna have like a moment where he almost dies at the end. That was fine. I didn't have a problem with it, but I did feel like how they got there was a little contrived. Like in all these movies, he's got rocket boots. He's got a little thing on his neck. He touches it and it seals up his head, and he is now safe to be floating around in space, you know, and everything. We didn't take any of that away from him. There was no point where it showed his rocket boots getting destroyed. So why is he having difficulty jumping from one of these ships to the other in 0G? Like, we've seen him do this many times, you know?
Yeah, that's a good question.
I don't know. It is nitpicky. I'm just gonna say I get it. It's nitpicky.
It is, but he likely handed it off because that's what they did in the second one. He gave his stuff to Drax to get Mantis out of there, and so he was stuck, and that's why Yondu had to sacrifice himself. So
I mean a scene like that would have been perfect. I would have been fine. Or like, you know, you remember in the big throne room scene where right before Groot takes all the guns out and they like blast everybody. You know, there's a moment where where what's his name again? The bad guy.
The creator.
Not the creator. That's not it. It's whatever.
Anyway, it's not important. He was. Yeah.
It's kind of important, but no. Anyway,
some bad guy.
No, he's got those like gravity powers, you know, and it's just like in that scene, he crushes both of them down onto the ground for just a few moments, you know, and then they get up and they shoot everybody after he's walked out of the room. That's the moment right there. You could just have him destroy Quill's, like, you know, not on purpose, but just as part of what happened. Oh, the High Evolutionary, that's his name. Sorry. He could have destroyed his rocket boots. That would also explain why Quill needs Groot to save him when he jumps out the window. You know, yes, they've never had a moment where he's had like sustained flight with the rockets, except for in Zero G. But still, it's like it would at least explain why he doesn't even have them on at all. You know, like just you have those things get destroyed, and then maybe he passes the Zero G suit thing to somebody else, and then you can have that scene. It'll be fine. It's just a little, you know, it's kind of one of those things where it's like maybe the script needed one more little pass or something. I don't know.
It's amazing how nitpicky you get with movies, and yet you give part 2 like a pass of Flying Colors.
I didn't say Flying Colors. I got issues with that one too. But I'm so surprised that you loved it, that you hated it so much when you loved the other one so much.
Well, part 2 had Kurt Russell, right? So
yes,
you know,
yeah, but I mean, you have Kurt Russell playing like this generic god creature. Like he's not relatable. He's not really.
I don't think he's that generic.
It's just like he's kind of phoning it in. Yeah, he's like for like in terms of sci-fi, he's just like this godlike creature. Like you could put him in like the end of like a Star Trek 5. You know,
yeah, that definitely had like a Star Trek feel to it. Like it's one of those like creatures that the crew has to deal with.
Yeah, and the thing that drives me crazy about part 2 too, like the thing with Yondu, right? It's like Peter's accepted at the end, like Yondu was his father the whole time. They're not together like at all during the entire fucking movie. The majority of their relationship is built up in part 1. Rocket spends more time with them, and it's just like, okay, well, we have this big emotional climax. It's all about this relationship, and the fucking guys weren't even on screen again.
Yeah, but you can't have the big emotional climax if they spend all the time together, because then they talk about it. Like you need him to spend time with his real dad.
It was a standalone movie.
No, you need him to spend time with Kurt Russell, and in hopes that he is going to have a real father-son relationship until that all comes crashing down and he realizes that he's an evil creature that sees himself, understandably so, but still sees himself as superior to all other life forms in the universe, and he decides that he needs to kill him, particularly because he killed his mom, you know. But there's no need for him to bond with Yondu until he realizes that his real biological dad is a total piece of crap.
I'm not saying they needed to like bond throughout the movie. Like it makes more sense for those characters to be in conflict throughout the movie, because that's like their relationship in the first movie was perfect. You know, they're fighting, they're arguing. You know, there's not a lot of love there, and then you know they come to a better point of understanding each other towards the end of that movie. That's what would have made stuff like that more believable. Instead, you spend a lot of time and energy focused on this one main storyline where it just wasn't believable. Quill never had a reason to believe Ego was like a good person or anything like that. You know, he was like lured by power, but they never really set that up either. Like it was just like kind of like out of nowhere. It just wasn't done well. I mean, the more compelling relationship in that movie is Rocket and Yondu. It's because they're relatable to each other and to the audience, and it just like that was some more interesting stuff to watch. It's just
like two scoundrels.
You don't feel that there's any sort of reason for Quill to to like bond with Ego when he's sitting there telling him stories about his mom and relating the music he's listening to, the music that his mom gave him, the music that literally is his only connection to life on Earth, and discussing these like life with him and stuff like that. I mean, and then by that point also they've already had the little catch scene, so he kind of like
Yeah.
he already
Ball
knows
throwing.
he already knows he's not lying. He knows that it is in fact his actual father. So it's like, you don't think that that's the combination of those scenes is like a reason for him to bond with the guy?
No, and I also accept the fact that like when it's your like a presumed father, you want to hope that they're well intentioned. Like you want to, and then he flips on you. But go ahead, Andrew.
But see, it's one thing for Quill to want to believe that, but you still got to sell it to the audience, right? And like the scenes still have to be compelling. You still need to have the conflict that's ongoing, where like somebody's really not buying into it. And they have scenes where like they touch on those points where like Quill and Gamora fight about it. I just think none of it really struck home with me. I felt the dialogue was very forced. That storyline itself was incredibly forced. It just I wasn't buying what they were selling, and it's really difficult. You need like a hook, something to really emotionally capture you early on. So I do like that scene that you're describing, Jason, with Kurt Russell and the Brandy You're a Fine Girl song. I think that's probably his best part in the entire movie. But I think too little, too late.
Yeah.
Yeah, one thing I'll say, hopefully, in trying to wind this down is I am happy that James Gunn is pulling more like a Spielberg, where even though he's gotten like a bigger role and like within a studio, that he's still going to be making his own movies and be involved in it and not just be producing, because I do think he has a very strong cinematic voice. He's a bit too cutesy. Like I don't want him to become the Wes Anderson of like action movies. I hope that he tones it down when he does the Superman thing. Yeah, I don't want him to go as dark as Snyder, but I also don't want him to like do it Guardians of the Galaxy, / Superman type of tone. So hopefully he'll know to find the right tone.
I agree with you about tone. I also just hope that it's just a far better movie than what Snyder made.
I hope so too. I mean, it'll be a different movie for sure. So that's something. I know there's a lot of concerns about the cast being sort of like almost like a TV level cast, but I trust.
I didn't even know who's in it.
Well, because he got rid of Cavill and he got this guy who looks basically like a cheap version of Cavill. But much like in the same sense of like that like Nolan casting Heath Ledger and many different like casting choices over the course of like Michael Keaton being cast as like Batman. You have to just trust that these people who've already done some really good work know what they're doing, and hopefully it work. Hopefully it wouldn't be. It's not going to be Superman Returns.
Yeah,
absolutely.
One thing that I will say absolutely is that if you told me, I mean, actually, like a week ago, that a conversation between a raccoon, a CGI raccoon, and a CGI otter would bring me to tears, I would have told you to go fuck yourself.
Yeah, I will say like I unfortunately for me it didn't like it's I got with it, I understood it, but there is some like thing of like these are just like animated creatures doing this, so it's definitely as much as they tried, it doesn't hit as hard as like some other scenes in other movies is all I got to say. Like especially I felt like the first one, if you and Groot was animated, like I feel like the ending of that was way more powerful than anything in the second or the third one. But it's but I accept that it was very emotional and he really went for it. But and you really felt it, like especially the motherly instinct of the other character. But I don't know, it just didn't hit as strongly as the first one. But it was very good.
It definitely made me cry, but I don't think some of the dialogue helped with that. This whole setting up that Rocket was like the central character the whole time. I thought that was bullshit. But but I mean, every like Rocket related flashback scene from that movie just tore me up. Like I can't show my wife that movie ever. She cares about animals too much. And even just rewatching it and knowing what was coming, like I still cried like 3 times. Like probably the last 3 scenes with those characters all together, because it was just really heartbreaking and tough to watch. But one thing I want to
Go ahead.
well, one thing I wanted to bring up before we wrap up is the needle drops in these movies are so special and so powerful. And
Which
I think,
by the way, I think he never repeated as good as it was in the first one, especially I think the third one had some like they didn't really all hit the mark, but I appreciated the fact that he did it at all, for sure.
well, the third one has 2 of my favorites.
In the what are your favorites?
Well, Creep, opening the movie with Creep was awesome. But my favorite was Florence and the Machine Dog. Dog Days Are Over, and using that as the centerpiece for like finishing up everybody's stories. Like that song was a surprise, but it was such a strong, beautiful choice. And hearing that song again after forgetting about it for like 10 years, it just brought so much joy and emotion at once, and I just thought it was fucking awesome.
Well, the only thing that bothered me about it is that it bounces around a bit in the periods, whereas like the first one was very like of a specific time and place on Earth. And I felt like the second one a bit more. I think there's like some 80s in there. But the third one is like there was Creep, there was Beastie Boys, there's like the Dog Days. It was a bit all over the place, but I don't deny that it was the right tone for the scene. It's just that it was no longer as strong of a statement about a period in time on Earth
agree
as far
with
as
what
music.
you're saying, Gil. I agree with that aspect of what you're saying, but I mean, in terms of the story, it totally works because the first film's soundtrack is supposed to be his awesome mix #1 that his mom gave him when he was a kid, and then on her deathbed she gives him a present that he doesn't open until #2, or until the end, I mean. And so the soundtrack for #2 is supposed to be awesome mix #2, which is all he gets taken away at like 1984, I think, or something like that, sometime in early 80s. So it's like #2 is all also music from the 70s and early 80s and stuff like that too. And then except for, of course, the very last song in the credits, which is the original song that they wrote. Then #3, at the end of #2, Yondu finds a early 2000s Zune. A Zune, and gives it to him. And his last thing he says to him, he says, like, it's what all the kids on Earth are listening to music on now. It has like 1,000 songs on it. And he's just like, 1,000 songs? What? So now he's got music from a lot of places now, and conceivably even added more music as time went on and stuff like that, especially since now he had been to Earth and things like that. But so I mean, I think it makes sense that now they expanded into other decades, but I totally agree with you that even though I do really like the soundtrack for #3, I love a few moments, particularly I'm so mad at myself that I can't remember what the song was, but the one where they're in the spacesuits and they're floating down to that bio planet thing in the fluorescent spacesuits. That one was really great. A couple others were really great too. But all that being said, I agree with you that there is something that just feels slightly missing because of the fact that that it's not all like an era, like a decade or something, or like the way that the first two are.
Well, which is fine. I accept that because he did it on the first one and second one, so you don't want to repeat yourself a third time. So I'm okay with it. It's just that it was, especially the Beastie Boys, I felt like it was a bit, I don't know. I mean, the Creep was not bad, especially because he went with the acoustic version.
It's
and
also
Dog Days,
very appropriate for what those characters were going through too.
It's also way better than Star Trek Beyond.
Yeah.
I was wondering if Matt was going to bring that up.
But
just throwing this out there, Gil, because you brought
Way
it
better
up.
than Star Trek Beyond.
I was just going to say, I was reading in the trivia, it said that James Gunn, in terms of filming the whole process of filming number 3, he said the most stressful thing for him out of all of it was trying to come up with the needle drops and the playlist that was going to live up to everyone's expectations after 1 and 2.
Yeah. No, but it's definitely some very good stuff in all these movies. But and I'm glad that he also gave it like especially the first one, like a different look than most Marvel movies. So he kind of like made it his own. So it's good. It's good. A bit too cutesy at times.
Probably what were you saying?
No, I was just saying like a bit too cutesy again, like the whole like Wes Anderson of action movies. Him and Taika Waititi, like I feel like it's if they're like one notch below, they would be just fine. But yeah.
Yeah.
Depends. I think it was a bit more balanced in 3 than some of the other ones.
Yeah. Anywho, but like we always say, I'm glad he's out there because it's he's definitely something different.
He's making some good shit.
Yeah.
I think Matt or no, was it? I don't know. Matt or Andrew, one of you guys mentioned his other films. Gil, have you seen all of his other movies?
I saw Slither a while back. I think you made me see it, and
Did I really? Oh,
yeah,
nice.
and I did see Suicide Squad once it was on streaming, because I was just curious to see what he did with that because the other Suicide Squad didn't do well.
Horrendous.
Yeah, I didn't see that one, but
I don't think that his Suicide Squad movie is amazing or by any stretch of the imagination, but I think it's by far better than it is the first one, and much better than most of the stuff that those other comic book movies that DC made.
Yeah, and I would say it was like a notch down with the humor. So, it was a bit more serious, but even though it was still very jokey. So I enjoyed it. Like it's the kind of thing, like I like to follow directors that are very good because you often like, even if it's something different, it's always them, to one extent or another.
I mean, for the record, it was me who brought up it was me who brought up James Gunn's Super and everything like that.
Oh,
and
super.
Yeah, that scene where Ellen Page at the time, Elliot Page now, actually raped Rainn Wilson in Super will forever be seared into my brain for better or for worse.
I think it's only one of his movies that I haven't seen, so I should catch that sometime.
Well, Kevin Bacon's in it, so it makes my life easier.
Yeah.
But
cool. Damn it, there was something I was going to say, but who cares at this point?
I know what you were going to say, Gil. You were going to give out an honorable mention for the Peacemaker series, which was awesome. And if listener hasn't seen it,
I did see that he directed a few episodes there.
Possibly the best intro for a TV show in years.
Yes, totally.
Yeah,
I agree.
I saw that it got good reviews, but TV is tough for me because I'm watching other stuff. I don't hop between shows. So I was like, if I get to it, I'll get to it eventually. but I'm glad to hear
Yeah.
that it's not bad.
John Cena's finest work as an actor. I can't. There's no higher praise than that. I pitched it to my wife. It's like John Cena plays a superhero who's a total fucking idiot. Enjoy.
If you need something to cut to after, the Belko experiment was fun. It wasn't great, but it was fun.
Oh, and he only wrote that, right? He didn't.
I believe he just wrote it. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
He wrote and I believe directed a segment of movie 43, which is a movie that I know you and Matt will hate, but I really want to show you guys.
Yeah, I guess we'll do an episode about it sometime. You know, it's one of the 4 movies he's known for some strange reason.
I don't know why. He's made far better.
Yeah. But what are you gonna do? Yeah. But I guess I should definitely see Super. I need to see Super, and oddly, I should also see, for Zack Snyder, I should see what's the one with also the superheroes.
Sucker Punch?
Sucker Punch. I don't know why I feel like I need to see that one too.
Let me just make you a recommendation. If you see Sucker Punch, right, I don't think you need to, but if you do, definitely go out of your way to watch the director's cut, because it has 3 to 4 times as much
female nudity.
Wow, Matt, what do you think I am?
It's a movie with Jenna Malone in being scantily clad. I mean, like, I would like to think that there's more.
Now I know which movie I'm seeing first.
My God, I'm talking about Oscar Isaacs here. Oscar Isaacs is in the movie, and he has a full-on music number. Like, it's outstanding to watch, and they cut it completely from the theatrical cut.
Oh.
So I mean, I don't heavily recommend the movie, but if you're gonna watch it, I would watch the director's cut.
Good to know.